Welcome to 7Trumpets Prepper channel, and guys, welcome to another edition of the Hard Truth Show. Now tonight we're going to be talking on, this is stream number 23, and we're going to be talking about the Apocalypse of Abraham, dissecting that, looking at that scripture text. I think a lot of people have never had the opportunity to have that before them. It also is a key tie-in to understanding quite a bit of things in the scripture. And not only that, but we're going to be discussing the 7 domes of the firmament, which also crushes this evolution theory, which crushes the globe Earth, which crushes NASA and all these lies out there. So that's going to be great too. So, I mean, we're going to be getting a lot of information out there in front of everybody tonight. I want to send a shout out to Brother WesBlaze that's going to be in-house with us here just shortly in about 10 more minutes. I'm going to bring him on and turn him loose. And we got video, PowerPoint, I mean, all sorts of goodness to put in front of everybody. But as always, before we get the show going, announcements, affiliates, all the good stuff, just going to run through it and try to get this done as quickly as possible. Disclaimer, as you've seen at the beginning of the video, and as I always say before every stream, information, content, guests, and their views on this channel that are brought on do not necessarily reflect the views of this channel. Fair use content is being shared for information, educational, and edification purposes and intent. Guys, if you haven't hit the like button, likes are free. Please hit the like button. Make sure to share this. Every one of y'all up on social media all the time. I know it. I'm on it right now talking to you. So just go over to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever these places are. Share this information. If you'd like to help financially support the channel, you can do so in the links below. We appreciate that. And also bang the notification bell. All right. So Pit to Palace says, one love, Kingman Shalom family from Jamaica. We got people in Jamaica in the house tonight. All right. So guys, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and bring Wes on here and add him to the stream.
Shalom from under the 7 domes family.
Hey, shalom, my friend. Thank you so much for setting. I know we've been working at this for, I think it's a month and a week or two, getting this prepped up to do this tonight. I truly appreciate you taking the time and coming on and being with us tonight.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here, and I appreciate it. It's an honor, and all praise to the Most High. I'm excited to look at some truths and look at some stuff that different, early church figures were saying, as well as some texts that not too many people might be familiar with. And I'm excited to be able to bring this to your audience. I know you got a nice sized one. I saw your channel. I know you're friends with Matthew Beavers, correct? How long have you known him?
Yeah. Let's see. I met Matt this year, and that was through Josh Keefe over there and Flat Earth. Well, I know it from Flat Earth Brothers, but it's Founded Earth Brothers now. They got a trademark change there.
Cool stuff.
So, I think what'd be really cool is to get everybody in the Flat Earth community in here and just lay the hammer down like on a bulk, everybody on the screen one night and chop it up. I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah. It'd be hard to get a word in, I'm sure, but we'd have fun.
Oh, yeah. Well, there'd be a lot of wisdom in the room. There'd be a lot of iron sharpening iron. That's for sure.
That's what's up. FE sharpens FE.
Yeah. Well, guys, if you want to check out Brother Wes's work, okay, right there's the link. And the link is also in the video description below. And I want to send a shout out to the brother because now y'all know I read. Like this library stacked full, and there's more books coming on the doorstep every day. But I was looking at one day a post or something I shared on Facebook, and I just happened to see Brother Wes shared something about one of the screen grabs from some artwork you done about the Apocalypse of Abraham. And I was like, what? I was like, hold on, pump the brakes. So I Googled it. I looked it up. I apparently have missed it over the years in the apocryphal writings and stuff like that. So got to checking into it, and it matched a lot of things that the scripture backed up. And so I was like, all right. And then after I read that, time went by, got the show going. I said, I'm going to reach out to Brother Wes and see if he would like to come share that with other people on here. Yes, so that night has come.
Cool. Here we are, right?
All right. So I'm going to load up that presentation. And like I said, brother, just let me know whenever the next slide you want it. I've just got to hit the tab over, and then we're good to go.
Excellent. Yes, sir. Now, just to introduce y'all to myself real quick, my name's Wes, right? I have the channel WesBlazeMuziK, as he showed. I also run a Facebook page called Messenger of the Most High. I upload to there nearly every day if I'm not putting my own artwork up or scripture collages and, just compiling scriptures to cross-reference and show you different concepts. Then I'm also sharing some of my favorite content from ministries like Hanging on His Words, Ken Heidebrecht, Kingdom in Context, Sean Griffin, his backup channel Kingdom Cast, some of the channels I've learned more from than any other ministry and channel combined, just over the few years that I've really been digging into this stuff and had my life changed radically, right? Grew up as a non-denominational, sporadic churchgoer to a single mother in Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas, 33 years old. And one day I had gone down the darker path in life and got into some down places. And one day a boss of mine offered to take me to get baptized. And it struck me as something I'd always wanted to do. And so when I did, I went and got it done. And I didn't want it to just be something insignificant that I forget quickly. So I really prayed. I was, sincere, fervent about it, and asked the Father if what they say about, his son, the story, the scriptures, if all that is true, and how do I know? And I asked him to reveal those things to me in just earnest sincerity. And before I knew it, within the next few weeks and following months, people kept coming to me, telling me I needed to look into the idea that we'd been lied to about the nature of this creation, this world, the shape of the earth. And by the fourth or fifth unrelated, unconnected reference to this and different people coming up to me to tell me in these ways, I couldn't shake it and shrug it off anymore. I couldn't laugh it off. So I started asking questions. The questions led to more questions. And those questions led me to start opening up my Bible. And that led me to start having my life radically changed, turned upside down, 360, well, 180, and doing well these days. I'm blessed. And all I want to do now, my passion in life and goal is just to get more people interested in the things of the Father and find that salvation in him and his son, because that's the most important thing.
That's right. I'll praise the Most High, y'all, for that. That's a beautiful story, brother. I tell you what, man, when people start asking to show me the truth, those that love the truth, Most High don't wait no time on it. He lets you know real fast. It gets laid out to you.
Literally changed my world. Yes, sir. He sure did. I praise his name for it. That's the Messenger of the Most High. I'll check that out. If you go to the next slide, please, brother.
All right. Give me just a second.
Sure thing. Yeah, I've had that Facebook page for a few years. I've had this YouTube channel for even longer, but it's only been more recently in the past year or two that I've been active on it. And we've seen excellent results from my videos being mirrored and shared to the late, great Rob Skiba, rest in shalom, over to his page. We've had Fight the Good Fight, my new series on spiritual warfare, got shared over there. And I'm so excited about that because so many people are getting to see it that I couldn't reach alone. And so the Father's really been working that way through me. And we've been doing another series. If you hit next, we got Uncommon Ground. And that's one of the main things that I like to point people over to, because that's been a passion project of ours, mine and Sean Griffin. That's Fight the Good Fight. That's the spiritual warfare. I just premiered the first episode a month or so ago. And then just night before last now, we premiered the second episode of Fight the Good Fight. Y'all check that out. A lot of people loving it. But our mission over at Uncommon Ground, on that show I do with Sean Griffin at Kingdom in Context, our mission is to share far and wide the truths of God's creation and how each individual component of his creation is utilized in his overall plan of salvation for man and mankind. So that's been just our mission statement, right? The goal and purpose of the show. And we get reached out to all the time. People telling us they're including our presentations and the things we've shown them in their homeschool curriculum. They're including it in the jail ministries, like prison ministries that they're doing. So many wonderful responses that really let me know that, like, this is God's purpose for my life. And so if anybody else has been called to felt the calling to want to put together a channel or do ministry work in any kind of way, something as simple as making memes and posting them, just sharing scripture on them, you can do this. And it apparently is having effects on people, because they tell me this all the time, and I just praise the Father for it. So that's what we do over at Uncommon Ground as well, specifically on the creation model, which we'll be talking about more tonight. What else we got, brother?
Oh, sorry. Give me just a second. Some people's coming in the building asking for your link to your YouTube again. I'm going to pop that up there real quick so everybody can see that.
WesBlazeMuzik. That's me. Y'all check that out over there. That's my main YouTube channel. I'm glad to be here, man. Yeah, that's episode 1 of Uncommon Ground. We touched on the topic specifically that we're going to be speaking of tonight, right? The title of the video is 7 Firmaments, 7 Heavens. And so that was the goal of that episode, just to kind of show people some of the fullness of the creation that doesn't often get discussed, because in the modern American 66 books that we know of as our Western Bible today, we only get mentions of, the firmament of heaven, the heavens made on the first day, depending on what translation you're reading. And then you get the third heaven in Paul's letter to the Corinthians, 2 Corinthians there. And but a lot of people don't know that there's more to it, and there's more of a fullness to the understanding of the placement of the heavenly realms and where God has things going on up there. So I'm excited to get into that. You can find out more on episode 1 of Uncommon Ground, Sky's the Limit. Here's the model. Now this is without all the furnitures, right? We don't have all the pieces in here yet, but we're going to hopefully build that picture for you some more tonight. And this is just a quick little visual illustration for you to be able to point out that there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines there within the structure that we know as the firmaments of heaven. And we'll define that. We'll have to look at some definitions of words, because I feel like that's a lost art these days, especially in the different walks and the communities of believers, that all too often we have been taught as a society and a culture these days, unfortunately, that, absolutes of truth just are hard, few and far between, hard to find, right? And so that even goes down to the minutia of definitions of just simple words. No matter how many syllables they are, people have been taught to redefine them to mean something that they don't mean.
Which is really scary in this last days, because if you can redefine what the definition is of something, then you're going to go completely off the map.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, sir. Yeah, even down to what is a woman? There's a big deal about that question being hard to answer. I'm not a biologist, but I'm pretty sure it's just an adult female human. But
right, when you check anatomy here, go back to the anatomy handbook. Yeah,
exactly. But when you get into when you get into scripture, especially looking at like Hebrew and Greek, the original languages these texts were written in, it's all too often even more important to try to understand the definitions, because there is no such thing as a perfect translation. That's what I believe. And so it's difficult because you get things lost in translation from language to language. Sometimes, a lot of times, the Hebrew has a whole lot more meaning in one word, one string of characters, than we do for an English word, and they're limited in that regard. So going back and looking at the definitions is something I hope to get to do here in just a second. If you go to the next slide, my friend. But if we start in the beginning, that's where God did. So in the beginning, Genesis 1, verse 1, God created the heavens and the earth. Now, all too often, we have people that are, maybe King James only is their preference. And I can understand. I was like that once upon a time as well for a short period. I thought that was, the only way to go. Everything else had been manipulated some kind of way. But as I said, no such thing as a perfect translation. However, most translations, you'll have the heavens represented as plural here. But regardless of which translation you prefer, if you looked at the original Hebrew, the word translated as heavens is shemaim. And every time you see the im on the end, I am, that designates plurality. So the shemaim is definitely a plural word. There's multiple heavens. And even if you do only use the King James, yeah, it might not say heavens plural in Genesis 1, but if you go to the very next chapter, Genesis 2, verse 1, it still says in the King James that God created, the heavens and the earth. It says plural there. So there were multiple heavens created on what I believe to be the first day of creation. Some people hold to the idea that this was before the first calendar day began. I believe 2nd Ezra 6, as well as 2nd chapter of Jubilees, verse 2 designates that this was indeed already the first day of creation in the creation week, when these heavens were brought into existence, and the earth. And so this was the second day. Go back and read Genesis 1 through 8 here. You'll be able to, notice some things that we might point out to you if these concepts are new to you. I'm sure most of your audience is familiar, but in case you're not, on the second day, another heaven was created. God created the firmament to separate waters above from the waters below. And then he goes on to call that firmament heaven. There's an analogy my brother Sean uses. I really love that. If you were to go to Home Depot, you get your shingles, your nails, your wood, your everything you need to build your home and your roof. Then after you put it all together, you got it solidified, you step back. Are you going to go say, here, honey, look at my shingles and my nails and my boards? No, you're going to say, there's my roof or my home. And so that's what the Father did when he put the firmament together. He fashioned this material and he calls it heaven. And that's a point to me that I feel like it took me a while to drive in, because even a year or two after I was familiar with these concepts, I still didn't understand completely that every time you see that word heaven, nearly every time, it's in reference to this firmament which we're going to find out here is a structure of vaulted domed proportions. If you go to the next slide, please, brother. So what is the definition, as we were talking about a moment ago? And if you look at the Hebrew, the word is rakia, and it signifies beaten metal plate like structure, is what I'm here to tell you. Because if you also look in the IE, the parentheses, it says vault of heaven, understood as a solid dome. This firmament was. So every time you see the word heaven, which was the name given to the firmament, you can make it synonymous in your mind with the vaulted heaven, understood as a solid dome. And we'll look at some verses that very much fit along with this this definition as well, if you don't mind. You got anything to say about this while we look at it, Lucas?
Actually, right here, somebody's comment, I do a dual answer to this right here. Somebody said the water above the firmament has curvature. So here's an interesting thing is if you go to Ripley's Aquarium, right, and you're riding the little conveyor belt thing through looking at the fishes, that glass dome is over you. So it looks like there's curvature, right? But that water's just wrapped over that dome, just like the water's wrapped over us. So, you know, when I read the definition, when I started looking at the Shamayim, when I started looking at this in depth, what was interesting to me is when it said beaten metal, right? And I think, I forget, there was one other somewhat definition. I can't remember if it was from the Strongs or something. But I started looking at this. I'm like, this is a constructed, like vaulted ceiling. You know, I'm starting to look at this as a contractor and a builder. I'm like, we're not dealing with a globe model here. We are dealing with an actual geostationary vault that is put over top of this. And then the Apocalypse of Abraham, I start reading it. It's like, this is a multi-tiered vault. This is almost like sitting in the stadium, you know, and there's the stadium bleachers. And then you look up and there's people on the next bleachers up, and then people in the next bleachers up. But it's all contained in the structure, which is further compartmentalized. So it's a real eye-opener when people start looking into this on the depth.
That's right. It's big. Yeah, there's more to it than we've, you know, commonly been taught. And even when you get into the fringe understandings of what it actually is, even in those worlds, in those walks of different communities, you don't often hear the fullness that I hope to be able to illustrate for you guys. So yeah, those definitions are important. I'd challenge anybody that anytime you're super certain about a topic and your stance in doctrine or whatever the case, and somebody comes along and says, I don't know if that word means what you're saying it means. If you were to look at the Strong's Concordance, these different Bible tools and things that are available to us online these days, at a click of a button, you can pull up and see what many scholars have said about the definitions of these words. And I think that's important to do to help get a better contextual understanding. Context creates comprehension, I've heard it said, and that's helped me a lot.
That's right. That's right. Sorry, this is taking me a second every time, man. I have to keep clicking back to StreamYard from it.
That's all right. I admire that you're able to do all the production in the background, so I'm thankful. I appreciate you.
No worries, man. I got you.
If we look at one of these texts now, Job is said to be one of the older texts we have. I know Job actually was alive during the period of, I want to say, Genesis 35. Right in there is when Job actually was living during that time frame. And so he said in chapter 22, verse 14, clouds are a hiding place for him, being the Father, so that he cannot see, and he walks on the vault of heaven. Now, multiple translations here will say it a little differently, but a lot of them use the word vault here. And so that's definitely congruent with what we saw in the definition before about what the firmament of heaven is, remembering that the heaven is the name given to the vault firmament. The Father walking on the top heaven there. Amos 9:6. This is one of my favorites that is really well stated in what the New American Standard Bible translation. I enjoy that one because specifically, instead of the King James, it'll say he has founded his troop, which is almost ambiguous. It's difficult to discern what it's meaning there. But if you look into the definitions, this translation, I believe, is a little more synchronous with what the intent of the verse was. So Amos 9:6, the one who builds his upper chambers in the heavens, as you were just mentioning moments ago, Lucas, the compartments, right? That comes to mind.
Right.
When you think chambers, okay? So chambers in the heavens, plural, and has founded his vaulted dome over the earth. He who calls for the waters of the sea and pours them out on the face of the earth. Yahuwah is his name. So go ahead.
I think, brother, sorry not to interrupt you. When you were saying that about the troop, I think when you read that, it's in the KJV. I think it reads that way. But in the American Standard Version, I think it was when I read that and I wrote it down, I think, put it in my Etsefer to compare with it. I think in the American Standard, it actually does have dome.
Cool. Yeah, several translations do. Yep, this is the New American Standard, so it would make sense.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. That's why
Right.
people need to compare scripture up on scripture. If it looks sketchy, compare it, because there's something going on there.
Yeah, absolutely. No such thing as a perfect translation. So when people say, what translation do you use, Wes? What's your favorite? I say pretty much all of them. I love going to Strong's. TheBibleHub.com is a favorite, quick and easy, website that pulls up a parallel comparison, and the Strong's Concordance as well. Well, it will show you just about every, translation that's commonly available in modernity, so you can really compare them. But this one's a good one because it's super, right on with the definition. It said conceived and understood as a vaulted domed structure, right? A vaulted dome. So that's exactly what Amos 9:6 here is conveying. And if you'd go to the next one, please. So second Esdras, a lot of people are familiar with Ezra, as is in the what's called the Old Testament of the 66 books most people are familiar with. But Ezra is a prophet, priest, and scribe that also wrote another book called Second Esdras, also maybe called For Ezra in like the Sefer and other versions. Whereas in this book, he says that the Father, he spreads out the heavens like a vault. Upon the waters, he has founded it. So heavens, plural, like a vault. So
that is a fire chapter. If nobody has read Second Esdras, you get flat earth, you get the end days and that. I mean, the very first of it, woe to you, Babylon, Asia, woe to you, Egypt, Damascus, put on haircloth, sackcloth, away, sons and daughters, because your destruction is nigh at hand. Please see manual. Yeah, I mean, that thing is, that is some savage information right there. As a matter of fact, it is the one area too people can find in the text where it says this is the beginning of sorrows. It literally says in that chapter, hashes off the beginning of sorrows. So if anybody's curious when the beginning of sorrows happens and matches Messiah's words, just see Second Esdras chapter 16.
That's right. Yeah. When the Messiah said, I want to say it's in Matthew, when he said something about how they've killed the prophets, and then he goes on to say that I will gather you under my wings as a hen does. He's quoting directly from Second Esdras, because that's where that verse came from that he's referencing. So lots of juicy details. Second Esdras 6 and 7 are some of my favorite chapters in the book as well. Lots of good meat in there to dig through that'll help to give you some context and some understanding of what some of the New Testament authors were referring to, and giving the same details of prophecy oftentimes even.
Yeah, that's a mandatory last day. End days we're living in, that's a mandatory read right there, Second Esdras. Absolutely. Now, Elder Joe passed away this past year, and when we done the Restoring the Foundations conference, like I think it was 8 years prior to that Elder Joe told me and Brother Joel about Second Esdras. I mean, like, that has been the back of my mind for a long minute. I mean, it's about to come to pass here in the near future.
Yeah, if you're one of those KJV only people we were mentioning earlier, no disrespect to you, this book actually is one that was included in the original 1611 King James Version, right? There was the 14 extra books that commonly referred to as Apocrypha were included in that. There you go. There it is. Yep. So 2 Esdras is in there. You should find this verse in there. This is one of the translations. I like the Common English Bible translation of it. It's in that one too. It's in the NRSV and the RSVs. These writings are in there. But if you go to the next slide, please.
Yes, sir.
Thank you kindly. Prayer of Azariah, another one of those books that was also in the 1611 and included in the works known as what's called Apocrypha. But who came up with those terms anyways? You know what I mean? Like if you grew up in Ethiopia in the last 2,000 years, not only would you have had those books included in there, but so would you have had the book of Jubilees, the book of First Enoch. Apparently, if you were an Essene or a member of the Qumran community, at least, you would have had those books as well. And who would have told you this is scripture, but this is half scripture? We're going to call it Apocrypha, and it's going to get its own section. It's all, just Holy Spirit inspired men writing and preserved these texts for us to glean from. And so in the prayer of Azariah, chapter 133, he says, "Blessed are you in the dome of the sky, worthy of hymns and honored forever." So Azariah was blessing the Father here in the dome of the sky. More context and understanding to go along with the definition. Hopefully you get a clear picture that that heaven firmament is like you were saying, a ceiling and a dome structure. So next slide, please. Now here we're getting into some New Testament in 2 Corinthians chapter 12 In verses 2 through 4, if you read the whole thing there, you'll see he says, I know a man in Christ who 14 years ago, whether in the body I do not know, or out of the body I do not know, God knows, such a man was caught up to the third heaven. So Paul references this, the third heaven. I want to point out just real quick a couple things he doesn't say. So he doesn't say such a man was caught up to the highest heaven, which is the third heaven. He doesn't say such a man was caught up to the third heaven, which is the only, there's only three heavens. He doesn't say anything like that. He just says that there was a man that was caught up to the third heaven. And I find it interesting, don't you, Lucas, that he says whether it was in the body or out of the body, I don't know, but God knows.
Because that's interesting, because that kind of goes down the line of Apocalypse of Abraham. It was like,
sure.
There's some experiences that people had that it's like,
yeah. Well, what I would put forth is that based on my understanding of texts like Enoch chapter 15, as well as even Corinthians 15, I want to say, where Paul is addressing the resurrection, and Enoch 15, he's talking about, the Father is talking about spiritual bodies, like the bodies of angels versus the bodies of man, or the giants in that case, where earthly creatures have earthly bodies, and in order to inherit the kingdom, or in order to ascend through the firmaments of heaven, you cannot have an earthly body. It would, it's full of sin. It would disintegrate in the presence of the Most High. As we even saw when the presence would come down, like in the tent with other people. But the case being is that a physical body, mortal flesh, cannot ascend to the third heaven. So that's why I'm pointing out. I don't know why he said this. Surely he would have known that, because even Yeshua said, right, in John 3, that no man has ascended to heaven.
That's
but
right.
The Son of Man. And people will say, well, what about Enoch and Elijah? Long story, right? That's for another video. But these guys they weren't able to physically, in their human mortal body, ascend through the firmaments of heaven. And furthermore, they're dead in Sheol, awaiting the resurrection with the rest of mankind. But in this instance, this is a modern American canon of 66 books, mention of a third heaven, which I think is important. But is that the highest one? Is that the only? Is that the top one? I would propose that no, it's not. Just because we get that definition for the firmament immediately over our heads as heaven, it's given the name heaven, as we discussed, firmament, solid dome structure. Does that mean that the other heavens, like let's say the second and third heaven, are those something different than the vault that we're familiar with directly over our heads? I would say this text in Enoch, this is First Enoch, that's the only book of Enoch that I ascribe to. He says in chapter 18, and I saw how the winds stretch out the vaults of heaven and have their station between heaven and earth. These are the pillars of heaven. Now, this is the Richard Lawrence. Now, maybe this is the R.H. Charles translation. So there's the Richard Lawrence and the R.H. Charles of Enoch. And so this is one of them that says vaults, specifically the plural version of vault. And you don't find that in other texts. So I thought it was important to notice that there's a consistency, right? He doesn't just give the name heaven to the firmament over our heads, the first one, and then call something else heaven above that. They're all vaults. Gotcha. So that, I hope that helps. But if you
there's a delineation between that there to clarify for people. Yeah.
Cool. Good. Yeah, I hope that helps. So that's a good text there in Enoch. If you'd go to the next one, my brother. So Deuteronomy 10 in verse 14. He says, behold, to the Lord your God belong the heaven and the highest heavens, the earth and all that is in it. So what I want to point out here is that obviously, again, we see a mention of highest heavens. It doesn't say that the third heaven is the highest heaven here either, but we got multiple mentions. And as we saw, if you were to keep reading in 2 Corinthians chapter 2, where we were just at before, he would have gone on to say that paradise is what that man that he knew was caught up into the third heaven. He was caught up into paradise. And if y'all were to check out Uncommon Ground, episode 25, Thy Kingdom Come, we did a whole breakdown on how the Garden of Eden that was on earth, indeed, for Adam and Eve, after they were exiled out of it, and years went by really before the flood happened in Noah's time, the Garden of Eden was somehow caught up into the third heaven during the flood, is what we've surmised from several texts. And that is what the house with many mansions that our Savior goes to prepare for us. It's the Mount Zion in the Old Testament. It's the New Jerusalem in the New Testament. It's the city and kingdom of God. And that's all synonymous with the word paradise. And that is what Paul was referring to, that's in the third heaven now. As you can see, that New Jerusalem with the three pearly gates, right?
On each side. That's right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. 3 on each side. 12 total for the 12 gates of Israel. 12 tribes of Israel. Next slide, please, man.
I noticed the live stream, or I've noticed in the comments stream, guys, for folks that come in here and support NASA, guys, don't miss the content of this show worrying about arguing with people that want to listen to deceivers. We're well past that goal point, that goal post. Like we're at a sifting point in this world where that if you want to listen to the world and you want to listen to fake CGI, and I haven't seen the first satellite in space yet that's real. And we can't even spin around on the ISS and look at the sun. Like it's time to just drop the fakery. So if y'all want to follow NASA, that's cool. I'm not going to time you out, because the only time I'm going to really time you out is if you're in there cursing. But I'm just telling the rest of you guys in here, learn something. Pay attention to scripture. Pay attention to Brother Wes. And if you want to go visit NASA's website and listen to stupidity, you can do that after the stream. Okay. Sorry about that, brother. Carry on.
Yeah, no worries. Bless those hearts. I wish that we had time to go into the entire creation model and show them from the the definitions of the words and the proof that we have that we definitely don't live on a spinning space ball, shooting through infinite galaxies on the road to nowhere in infinite darkness with infinite potential for other life forms that are, all doomed to a solar explosion one day. None of that is real. It's all fairy tales. And I know we just have cartoons here too, but these are at least a little more accurate to true reality that you can verify and test and validate through the word of God. 1 Kings 8:27, will God indeed dwell on the earth? Behold, the heaven and the highest heaven cannot contain you. How much less this house which I have built? I've heard people argue then from verses like this and where it's paralleled in Chronicles that the highest heaven cannot even contain the Father. So you're trying to tell me he has a physical place that he sits on in the highest heaven? That's not how I interpret this verse, because over and over again, we see multiple verses declare that he is indeed in the heaven, that he walks on the vault of heaven, that he has a place, that he has a throne that the Son of Man ascended to sit at the right hand of him on. So we have all these, details that are I accept and take literally, unless the context of a metaphor or a symbology that's given in scripture necessitates otherwise. I accept what the word literally means. So when he says that the heavens are up, that Sheol and Hades are down, in these directional terms are given, I accept them as truth, right? If you're on the bottom of a ball, heaven would be a different direction for somebody at the top of a ball. But if you're on a single plane, right, a planar surface, then you're going to have up be the same direction for everybody. And the Father knew this when he was describing his creation and giving these details and descriptors for where he is versus where we are. And I do believe that even though the highest heaven cannot contain him, that he has made a place for him with a physical, literal throne. The text says he has arms, he has legs, he literally sits on the throne. It says he has eyes. Daniel and Enoch says he has a beard. Like, we're talking about something tangible, real physicality to these places above us. Whereas in modernity, Catholicism has often taught that when you speak of heaven, it's this intangible, ethereal kind of wispy ghost land of a other galaxy, extra dimensional. Nobody can really measure it or anything. But I'm here to say it's absolutely real. There's worlds of land, buildings, trees, animals, ecosystems, all kinds of stuff in the realms above our world that the Father's created. And it's like a house with a basement and multiple roofs and multiple levels in the skyscraper that he's built here for us to all live in. And I praise him for it. If you go
it's a beautiful design too. It functions.
It does. It's very functional and practical. And he consistently describes it, hundreds and hundreds of verses in his texts. He's been very consistent about describing it. None of it matches up with a spinning ball. This is Psalms 148:4. Praise him, highest heavens, and the waters that are above the heavens. So, Lucas, this brings up a good point. Have you ever heard of Kent Hovind or watched any of his things?
So Brother Joel turned me to Kent Hovind's content and stuff over time.
Yeah, cool. So he taught me a lot about like carbon dating. He was breaking down evolution and the Big Bang and how these different things that are taught to us can't be congruent with the biblical narrative, right? And so I learned a lot from that guy. But he also proposed, when he was trying to discern creation and the creation model, because he ascribes to the spinning globe narrative, he was trying to make sense of the idea of the firmament, because he can recognize surely that there was some sort of physical structure. And he believes that that was only at one point, because the Hovind theory, as it goes, about the firmament is that it was an ice canopy, and that it was holding back the waters for the flood, and specifically for that purpose and occasion only, that once the flood happened, it was collapsed, destroyed, however the case, melted maybe, and that it's no longer there. But here's David, or the psalmist in this case here, writing that there are waters above the heavens. And I want to say this is 2,000 years after the flood.
Yeah, not to mention Ezra's saying that this thing's hung on nothing. So we've got quite a few issues with the design that most people want to purport. You know, an interesting thing too is when you look at certain people's views of how, especially like you go back to like Jurassic period, crazy stuff like that, and they want to show all these levels of periods. Have you seen that one where there's like a palm tree or whatever that got washed away with the flood or tree, and all these so-called strata, that tree's running through all that strata? Have you seen that one? It's a fossilized tree,
okay,
but where it's supposed to be multiple strata and multiple, you know, like all these, you know, millions of years apart and stuff. That tree's perfectly wedged through all that.
Yeah, I
So
see.
like it's like, when did the tree die? Because apparently it got washed away in the flood, packed in a short amount of time. But apparently it was supposed to be in one of these time periods. Where do we want to file that one? You know, they've got some serious issues with these things that they try to sell us.
Very much so. Yeah. True archaeology and geology and historical studies, you know, all too often you get this narrative pushed that will conceal these facts. But when you really look at truthful, honest scholars revealing some of these things about the way the land was pushed together, the sediments, the fossil records, it very much is conducive to there having been a worldwide flood. And you can't flood a ball. You'd have to put a ball in a container to flood it. So you can flood a plate-like, you know, flat thing with a dome ceiling over it. That's very easy to flood. So we're going to get into, I know he titled the video, this is one you were excited about, Lucas, is the Apocalypse of Abraham that we're going to get into. And I just wanted to set that book up. The Apocalypse of Abraham was included in some collections of scripture. I believe it was the Syriac canon. If you look into that one, the Armenian canon might have had it. But the point is, if you were to have lived in different places across the world throughout time, especially, you know, 1,000, 2,000 years ago, they would have had a collection of scriptures, much like what we have today, but they would have had more books that were included. And the Apocalypse of Abraham, I would suggest, is one of them in certain places of the world. And we find this interesting nugget in our Bibles today of our Messiah in John 8, verse 56. He says, "Your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day, and he saw it and was glad." Now, if you were to go back to the chapters of, let's say, Genesis 13 through 15, and you were to look at these visions that Abraham was getting, Abram, right? The father was giving him visions of the covenant. He was describing that to him. And he was giving him visions of like the descendants being numbered like the sands of the sea or like the stars in the heavens. And he was showing him different things about the future and giving him faith, right? And rewarding his faith at that point. And we don't get a direct mention that Abraham saw the Son of Man, that he saw Yeshua, that he saw anything about his messiahship and his role in the whole story. We don't get a detail like that in Genesis 13 through 15. But if you would go to the next slide, there is a text that directly explains these things. Go ahead, Lucas.
Y'all better get ready for this.
Yeah, so it's Abraham's vision expanded, I'd like to say. Because if you go to Apocalypse of Abraham, chapter 29, about verses 4 through 6, he says, "And I looked, and I saw a man going out from I can't see the left side, maybe."
Oh, yeah, sorry, the logo's blocking. Right. I'm sorry, brother.
No worries. But he went out from the side of the nations, and there went men and women and children from the side of the nations, many hosts, and worshipped him. And it said a man, right? "And while I still looked, there came many from the right side, and some of these insulted him, and some of them even struck him, but others, however, worshipped him." So this is Abraham saying he's seeing a man being worshipped by some, and then others are, striking him, insulting him. Who does that sound like? Well, the text is pretty clear. If you were to read the entirety of the Apocalypse of Abraham, which I very much recommend, you'll understand that he's seeing that which our Messiah was directly explaining in John 8, that Abraham did in fact see his day directly and specifically. And this is fleshed out for us in Apocalypse of Abraham. And there is no other text that I'm aware of that directly describes Abraham having foreseen, prophesied of the Messiah in any regard.
I think, hold on, let me share this one real quick, brother. I think there was one more in 31.
Okay. Yeah, but the Apocalypse of Abraham too, right?
Yeah. In the Apocalypse of Abraham, I'm trying to think right here. Then I shall sound the trumpet from the sky, and I shall send my chosen one, having him one measure of all my power, and he will summon my people blamed among the heathen. Yeah, there's one. I think there's one more in there. But yeah, it's a fire book. People need to be reading it.
Yes, sir. Yep. My point is just that no other book, right, that we are familiar with in our modern American Bibles really give lends credence to the fact that Yeshua can say, Abraham saw my day.
I got you. No,
right.
You're on point with that. Absolutely. I'm sorry. I thought you were referencing there wasn't another one in there showing Messiah. And I was like, I thought there was one more, but yeah, there's several mentions with that. Absolutely.
Correct. Yep. In the Apocalypse of Abraham, it goes into it. So I wanted to set that book up because it also gives us some interesting details where we can kind of flesh out more details of the creation model and understand these layers of the heavens, the firmament. So if you'd go to the next verse, please, my friend, we'll have more to look at with the Apocalypse of Abraham, chapter 19. We'll start at verse 27. He says, "And he commanded that the sixth firmament should be removed from my sight. And I saw there on the fifth firmament the powers of the stars, which carry out the commands laid upon them, and the elements of the earth obeyed them." So as you see, this illustration to the right was created by Ken Heidebrecht over at Hanging on His Words. Excellent channel. If you go to subscribe to him, he makes a lot of graphics like this as well. And so he's got the stars on the fifth level of the firmament, as you see in the top, the Most High. And I love that the Most High is not only a representation of his authority, it's a physical, literal description of his location. He's literally the Most High, above all.
That's right.
Yeah. So there's that. And there's angels directly below that level on the sixth firmament. And we'll see some more of these details paralleled in some other texts in a moment. But the stars, as this verse is specifically referencing, are on the fifth firmament. So that's you can see the fourth below that, the third where the New Jerusalem paradise, as we mentioned before, is. And we'll see where the sun and the moon might be placed. Actually, we're not going to get into that in these texts, but I now believe that the sun specifically, may be in the third firmament. It's the same with the New Jerusalem as well. The moon, there's not a passage that directly addresses it. Revelation 12, according to our interpretation, might help you understand that it could be under the firmament where the sun is. So it could be in the second. I'm not positive. There's a text called Third Baruch, which is difficult. There's some good stuff, some things that are still to be studied in Third Baruch, but it directly states that the sun is in third firmament. But in this text of Apocalypse of Abraham, it straight up says the stars are in the fifth, which I thought was cool. But if you go to the next verse, please. And would you read one? You mind reading this one?
Glad to, brother.
Yeah, go ahead.
Apocalypse of Abraham, chapter 19, verse 4, and says, "And while he was yet speaking, the expanses opened, and there below me were the heavens. And I saw upon the seventh firmament, upon which I stood, a fire widely extended, and the light which is the treasury of life, and the dew with which Elohim will awaken the dead, the spirits of the departed righteous, and the spirits of those souls who have yet to be born, and judgment and righteousness, peace and blessing, and an innumerable company of angels and the living ones, and the power of the invisible glory that sat above the living ones."
Very good. Thank you kindly. So we got a couple things in this one, and you and I were even speaking about this backstage before the show, about how if you were to type up Apocalypse of Abraham, there's several good sites that have this text available free online. One of them being like earlyjewishwritings.com, I believe, is one of them. And if you were to go there, you might notice in one of the versions or one of the translations of this text, it'll have certain verses and passages it'll have two different translations for them because there are some minor variances. Excuse me. Just like in the text that we have available to us today in books that we're more familiar with, there are some minor textual variances and translational variances, as we've discussed. But this one will say eighth firmament. There's a number 8 on some translations of this. I would hold that the translation that does indeed say the 7th and doesn't say 8th firmament, I would say the 7th is more accurate. Whereas you never know what kind of translational error, scribal error, or sometimes there's damage to the texts over time, and the translators will try to do the best they can with what little is available. And so you never know what happened, but the 7th is what I have listed here, and there is a translation that says that as the highest. And as we'll see from consistently other texts that can be validated, the 7th seems to be the highest one as well, which would make sense.
I will support what Brother Wes said on that. I've only in the time frame, and this is something, guys, now within like 12 years of being in the truth, that I've had 1 year on the Apocalypse Abraham pretty much at this point, but like within reviewing it multiple times, I've only found one text, which was actually from I can't remember the college that actually I got it from, but I read it, and it is the only one that I can think of that I ran across it where it actually in one spot said 8th. So other than that, there was nothing else that even, leaned toward that. So I would agree completely. You're going to have translation errors with, not a doubt in my mind.
And then on the other hand, you got texts like what's called the Secrets of Enoch, Second Enoch, some people refer to it as. I mentioned earlier, I only ascribe to the text known as First Enoch when it comes to the books of Enoch, whereas the Second Enoch with the Metatron and some other wonky stuff, it talks about there being 12 or was it 10 firmaments. Either way, I don't believe that text is inspired. I believe it contradicts prophecy as well as theology multiple times in Second Enoch. So this is the one we're looking at here, Apocalypse of Abraham today. Thank you for reading that. Oh, there was one other point in here, is that when you see it says he's on the 7th firmament, he's looking at things. He's listing different things that he's seeing up there. And he says he sees the light, which is the treasury of life, and the dew with which God will awaken the dead. Now, the very next statement can seem odd if you're aware of the reality of some of these things. It says, the spirits of the departed righteous and the spirits of those souls who have yet to be born. Is this saying that Abraham on the 7th firmament was seeing the spirits of souls who have yet to be born? I'm not positive that that's the case. I don't think that's how it works. I think that this is the sentence structure is a little difficult. You have to remember in these original languages, Hebrew, Aramaic, maybe even Syriac, I'm not sure, but I don't think there was any punctuation. And so trying to piece together the sentence structure and figure out which adverbs and adjectives are describing which noun can often be a little challenging. But what I would say
it definitely can, because like from Foreign Language Academy, reading and learning Hebrew, you have to look at the full depth of the sentence sometimes to really figure out, because some words can have like 30 different variations of what you're using the context. It can get really, really interesting fast. So
Sure. Yeah, all I was trying to get at here is with the dew. This is a whole nother study in itself to understand that there is a dew, prepared that God will use on the day of the resurrection at the 7th trumpet, at the return of our Savior, when he raises his people from the dead. There is something that like a literal practical application that God has preserved dew to use for that process, that he will use to awaken the dead. And I'd say that that's what's being referred to here when he says, and the spirits of the departed, basically. He will use to awaken the dead, the spirits of the departed righteous, and the spirits of the souls who have yet to even be born. It's all in allusion and reference to the future resurrection to come, that he's going to use this dew to awaken the spirits of the departed righteous and people who haven't even been born yet at that time. This is being said. I hope that makes sense.
Well, I look at it like this, and somebody actually just made a comment to lean in with what I'm about to say too, is if you look in the scripture, like in Deuteronomy, I believe it is, it talks about the firstborn. Like, for example, you're to redeem animals, right? And if you're not going to keep that ass or donkey, then you have to break its neck because you didn't redeem it, because it opened the matrix, the womb, right? And the word literally translates sometimes matrix. People say we live in a matrix. I would argue we are born out of a matrix. And that's an interesting thing because we're born of the fluids that bring us life and all these amino acids and blockchains. And it's like, if you're going to reanimate something, what do you need? Well, you would need the same thing that you created life with, and then you would need the DNA sequencing. I think that's also why when the dead is resurrected, I don't want to die in an unrighteous state because we're like a hard drive. If you die in sin, all that is recorded on that hard drive. When you start that computer back up again, you're going to be in the same state. Whereas if you died in righteousness, when that hard drive's restarted, you're picking back up where you left off and your works await you. As Brother Rob is at rest right now, his reward awaits him in the resurrection, just like Brother Joe too. And so that's kind of how I'm starting to look at this stuff, like way deeper level. But you got to be careful to have them conversations with people sometimes because they're just not ready for those talks.
I know it. Yep. As we're seeing, some people aren't even comfortable or familiar with the idea that we don't live on a space ball, whereas we're over here talking about like the levels of the heavens. But that's okay. That's okay. Yeah, we're gonna go over some people's heads sometimes. We just pray that you're able to catch up to it, because this is fascinating stuff. And if you're into the Father and His Son and His Word, then there's so much layers of truth for us to be able to dive into. And yeah, I appreciate y'all hearing me out on my understanding and kind of eisegeting this verse here.
You ready for the next one, brother?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exegeting, I think, was the word I was looking for. Apocalypse of Abraham 19, 5-8. And I looked downwards from the mountain on which I stood to the sixth firmament, and there I saw a multitude of angels of pure spirit without bodies, whose duty was to carry out the commands of the fiery angels who were upon the seventh firmament, as I was standing suspended over them. And behold, upon this sixth firmament there were no other powers of any form, save only the angels of pure spirit. So that's really cool, because yeah, it's just showing that there is on the sixth firmament some angels, right? And they're answering to the angels above them, it says. So even within the hierarchy and the levels of the chambers of heavens, there's a hierarchy to the angelic order, right? So it's denoting that and pointing out here for us that there are angels serving angels that are above them in this hierarchy, with the Most High being above all of them, and the Son sitting at His right hand, right?
That's right.
Yep. Fifth heaven has the stars. Sixth has the some of these angels here that are pure spirit. It says they don't even have bodies, whereas it's an interesting study in itself just to look at how spirit beings, we're taught to think that they don't have bodies, that they're incorporeal and that you can't touch them or something. But here we're looking at like Genesis 18, 3 angels come down and sit and have a whole meal with Abraham. It says they eat a slaughtered calf and drink milk, right? And so there's that going on. And when Yeshua is resurrected and he's standing with his disciples, he's like, I have flesh and bones, unlike a ghost or an unclean spirit. I'm not that, because you can put your finger in the hole in my side and feel me, that I'm real, that I'm literal and tangible. And he sat and ate fish with them even, right? Yeshua did, after he was resurrected into an immortal spirit body. But it's just a different anatomy. Whereas we're made of flesh and blood of the earth, dust of the earth. In the resurrection, we're to be made of what's called water and spirit. And that's what the angels and Yeshua is now made of. And so you have apparently here in the sixth firmament, there's angels that don't even have a corporeal body, but they're pure spirit, just serving. And that's beautiful.
Yeah, do you, just curious before, because I don't want to ruin this presentation, do you have that in there where that angel visited Abraham in the apocalypse?
I don't think so. No, I was just focused.
Okay, if it's okay, I want to pause and bring something up here, because this was one of the things I wanted to get your thoughts on.
Cool.
Okay, so guys, just real quick, what Brother Wes is saying is, I'm going to go Indiana Jones for just a second, but I'm sure a lot of people seen the Indiana Jones movies over the years. If this thing will load up. I don't know why that is so hard to get that image to load tonight, but this is Sanskrit writings. And if anybody's ever seen the Indiana Jones Temple of Doom thing, right, there was this blue Hindu deity. Now, I'm not going to, y'all know I don't say the false deities' names in here, so y'all just going to have to do your research, all right? But the Hindu religion's interesting because it has these blue deities, a lot of them, right? Here's somebody dressed theirself to emulate that or whatever, right? Well, what's interesting is Abraham has this angel visit him. And in the 11th chapter, it says, and I stood and saw him who had taken my right hand and, sorry guys, my logo's cutting it out by the feet, and stood on my feet, I believe is what it says. And the appearance of the griffin's body was like sapphire, and the likeness of his face like chrysolite, and the hair of his head like snow, and the turban of his head like the appearance of the bow in the clouds, and the clothing of his garments purple, and a golden staff was in his right hand. And he said to me, Abraham, and I said, here's your servant. He said, let my appearance not frighten you, nor my speech trouble you. Come with me, and I shall go with you, visible until the sacrifice. But after the sacrifice, invisible forever, be bold and go. Now, I bring that up because I wanted to ask your thoughts on this too, Wes. Is the blue or the sapphireness of that angel, apparently it has the ability to be invisible to those of us of flesh and blood. But secondly, when the fallen angels fell from heaven, I wonder if some of these particular angels fail. And that's why that like some of the false religions of the world deified some of these fallen angels, because they actually weren't invisible anymore. Who knows? They lost their ability to do that anymore. They're stuck down here with us. They've fallen. I don't know. These are some thoughts that went through my head as I read this text, and I try to figure out why that people arrive at some of the venues they do in the false religions of the world. Like, this might actually start making some sense of the answers of some of this stuff going on. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, first thing that comes to mind is that the word sapphire, as it's translated, can mean a stone. Even in modern times, sapphire isn't always blue. Depending on what the word was it was translated from, it could have been a stone that could have been any color, honestly. And keep in mind too, he was saying it was just his body was like the appearance basically of sapphire. So even if it was blue, let's say it was, then yeah, there was very possibly that these beings have a crystalline appearance, which would make sense given that I believe the heaven is also made of a crystalline sapphire type glass-like metal of sorts, a heavenly material. But nonetheless, my thoughts on the blue, like when you go into Hinduism and look at some of the deities that they would worship with the blue coloring of the skin, like for instance Krishna. I'm sorry, you said you don't say that on this channel. I apologize. But
it's for education, brother.
Yeah, for education. No worries. Nonetheless, he's one of them that was referenced as having blue skin. I don't know if those guys were technically the fallen, the rebellious angels, the watchers, or if the beings like that one were more like the creations of them, the giants, the Nephilim. There was a variety of those beings that were the offspring of the rebellious angels that I believe lends more toward the cultures believing in these deities. So, but I can't prove that for sure. I can't say for certain. And it's very possible that when angels would appear in more of their natural state, that they would have a blue tint to them. That's entirely possible. Also, it's fun to mention that from our breakdown of Enoch, when it describes the days of Jared and then all the way to Noah's time, the rebellious watcher angels, who the 200 that Enoch quotes as the ones who had mated with women, they were around for, I want to say, around 700 years before the flood. And so they were just here, right on earth among people. And there was 200 of them, and people were able to, start worshiping them, I'm sure, calling them gods and all kinds of things. And that is very likely. It's possible where different cultures would get those blue tinted deities from. But it's fun to mention that that's a whole nother study in itself, is to look at the spiritual beings, the angels, the future resurrected mankind, because they're, as Second Baruch says, they're shapeshifters. They're able to change their shape at any time. Most of the time in the Gospels or the texts of the American canon we're familiar with, they look like men. There's no distinguishing difference between a man and an angel. So they can appear as however they'd like to, a burning bush, right?
Right.
But
it's interesting, because all these people that write these books and novels and science fiction work, I'm like, folks, all they did was just go try to steal this knowledge from the scripture. Like, sometimes people need to understand that reality is more real than fiction. like, I mean, they just don't even know what's coming at them yet.
I like to tell people the more familiar you become with the text known as First Enoch, the more you're going to see those same themes represented in movies and TV shows and pop culture, because a lot of people are familiar with some of the the core concepts of the Bible, like Noah's Ark and the flood and Jesus coming and these things. But when it comes down to the things that Enoch clarifies and makes certain for you, whereas in Genesis 6, the sons of God came down and took women and made wives, and giants were in those days. It doesn't directly tell you that, hey, these are angels, and angels did indeed mate with women, and they created these offspring, and they were around, and now they're the unclean spirits. But you'll see these themes represented in movies and culture oftentimes, because the people that are putting those messages out there, they're very much familiar with these stories.
Oh yeah. Oh, you read Book of Hanak and you see the Lord of the Rings, and you're like, oh, okay, you just stole that content.
I was just about to say, yep, J.R. Tolkien. That dude was onto some stuff.
That's
Tolkien.
right.
Yes, sir. So what else do we have in Apocalypse of Abraham, if you wouldn't mind? I think there's at least one more slide for it. Enjoyed talking with you.
Oh, same here, and it's been a pleasure.
Cool. That was it actually for Apocalypse of Abraham for now. But the Testament of Levi is one of the 12 books known as the Testament of the 12 Patriarchs. That collection is much recommended. I put that right along there with Apocalypse of Abraham for you guys to study into, dive into. And I was stuck with what's known as the R.H. Charles translation of the Testament of 12 Patriarchs for the longest, until just recently I was looking into some more translations available to us of what was found in the Qumran cave findings of the Dead Sea Scrolls that what have they been digging in there since the 1950s or so?
It's been a long minute. They just found something, some pieces of text recently was in Google News.
Yep. Yes, sir. So it's still an ongoing discovery that there's texts, and most people don't know that the oldest current copy of the book of Genesis that mankind knows about was found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, right next to books like the Book of Jubilees, which was the 6th most common book found in the Qumran Cave Dead Sea Scrolls, which also the books of Enoch and some of the Testament of the 12 Patriarchs. Now, a lot of the manuscripts they had there so old, the Testament of the 12 Patriarchs, there was only a few fragments available of some of those books that were in there, and Testament of Levi is one of them that was preserved enough to be able to translate, which I love, because it goes right into some of the 7 heavens. Actually, it numbers all of them, and this translation is one from the Dead Sea Scrolls rather than R.H. Charles. Go ahead and read this one if you wouldn't mind.
All right. It says, listen concerning the 7 heavens, the lowest is darker because it is near all the iniquities of men. The second has fire, snow, and ice ready for the day of Yahuwah, when the righteous judgment of Elohim is poured out in vengeance on the wicked. In the third are the host of the armies which are ordained for the day of judgment to work vengeance on the spirits of deceit and of Belial.
All right. Yeah, we see Paul, and I think Yeshua might also too mention Beliar or Belial in the New Testament writings. And so it's cool to see that they'll use those same names in some of these other texts, whereas you might not see them in the common Old Testament we have today, whereas the New Testament authors are quoting them or mentioning these names like Belial or Beliar. But yeah, I love that it shows the second heaven. That's interesting too, though, that the lowest is darker because it is near all the iniquities of men. So that just goes to show how there's a blessing and a curse, right? And so if the men are sinning for however long, right, 5,000 years, maybe 6,000 that they've been sinning, it's had an effect on the creation apparently. And so
it's dark in the glass. Yeah.
Interesting, right? The second, fire, snow, and ice, ready for the day of Yahuwah, right? The day of vengeance, the day of his wrath, at the 7th trumpet. And actually, even in, like, I want to say the first, second trumpet, you see hail coming down with the fire and the blood.
The size of a talent, wasn't it said? Or was it a millstone? I can't remember what Revelation said. It was huge, though, the pieces coming from the heavens.
Right. So there's big hail coming down. So this text is telling us, and I want to say there's something in Job as well that directly explains, hey, in this chamber and compartment of the heaven, he has reserved like weapons for the day of his wrath. And so fire, snow, and ice are one of them. And this text points that out for the judgment of poured out in vengeance on the wicked. And in the third are the hosts of armies, which are ordained for that day as well. So the third heaven, where we mentioned earlier that the paradise that Paul talks about in 2 Corinthians, that paradise, New Jerusalem, is there. Apparently there's also a whole world of angels that are armies, the hosts of the armies, ready to come down and work judgment and perform vengeance on not only the wicked humans, but the spirits of deceit, the unclean spirits, those demons that trouble so many people, and the enemy adversary himself, right? The Satan character. So they're about to get wiped all out by all those angels that are just hanging out, chilling, waiting in the third firmament for the day when they come down to do battle with the Son of Man. It's going to be a great day.
Looking forward to it.
Yes,
looking forward to the reset button.
Yeah. Now the top four heavens are holy, for in the highest of all dwells the great glory, in the holy of holies, far above all holiness. I love it. It calls the seventh heaven, the highest heaven, the holy of holies. In the sixth are the angels of the presence of the Lord, who minister and make propitiation to the Lord for all the sins the righteous committed in ignorance. And if you want direct explanation and description, instructions for what the priests do for the sins of ignorance, I'd go check out Leviticus 4 and 5, because this is going to be a bombshell for some people. It's talking about angels who minister, making propitiation for sins of the righteous committed in ignorance. Now, I agree. We have a high priest in Yeshua, our Messiah, who is our high priest now. And I would argue that he performs these same duties that these angels are described as doing in the sixth heaven. And if they're making propitiation, that's a word for a priestly word. And ministering is a priestly word as well. So if these angels are working in a priestly capacity, then they're working in a temple on an altar according to a set of instructions that we lovingly coined the Torah, right? Well, there are priestly instructions, and I would say that as on earth as it is in heaven, the Father wishes his will to be done. We know that to be true. And so the Father directly described and instructed his priests on earth of the earthly temple to perform these duties, as we know as animal offerings, sacrifices. That is a system that is part of his law. And we know that his law is eternal if you recognize the truth of Scripture. And so now that our Messiah is a high priest, he does the job of the high priest. But even in the instructions for the tabernacle on earth, there was the high priest, and then there's a whole system of priests that work under him that would help to maintain the temple and do the offerings. And whereas I'm here to say that there were angels and there are still angels that work in temples in the heavens, because in each, as we described, in each layer, there's whole worlds. And so it would only make sense that the Father would have a place of worship in each of the heavens, in each of these worlds up there. And the true definition of worship, according to his Torah, the first time you see that word worship used in Genesis, when Abraham thinks he's going to, he's telling Isaac he thinks he's going to go do a sacrifice, right? The lamb on the hill. And he says, we're going to do worship. And so the angels are doing the same kind of worship up there. And so, it even says that all the sins of the righteous committed in ignorance, as I said, Leviticus 4 and 5 talks about how they would dump out the blood of the animal before, they'd pour it out onto the ground next to the altar before they'd burn it up on the altar. It says here, and they offer to the Lord a reasonable, sweet-smelling savor and a bloodless offering. So, of course, the animal would be bloodless by the time you've drained it and put it on the altar, as the angels are doing in the sixth heaven that this is describing. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think you're on point with that. I think that everyone within all their areas are going to worship the Most High, especially on his set apart days and stuff. I mean, like the tablets that were written in heaven, copied to Moshe on earth. I would expect that if he expects that of us, man, I'm sure spiritual beings are expected to worship and do exactly the same. So one law for all, so
something I didn't point out is that, like, when Moses is on the mountain, I believe Exodus 32-33, you're going to see that the Father says, make all these things after the pattern which was shown to you. And so I would say that there's other texts like the Apocalypse of Baruch and other texts that makes this clear, that the Father would show his prophets literally the temple that's in heaven and say, make it like that, except on earth. And so he was showing them literal physical, maybe blueprints, but also a view. Like if you were to go to Zillow or something and look at apartments.com or something,
Right.
He's giving them a view, a tour of the heavenly realms where there are actual physical buildings and structures, right? We see that the New Jerusalem and the city of God is called something that was not made by man. It says that it was inscribed in the palm of his hand, that it was made by the Father's hands. And so he makes literal structures in the heavens too. And yeah, that's fun stuff, because that's a whole nother study in itself. But I think there's a little bit more of Testament of Levi if you'd go on.
All right.
In the fifth heaven are the angels who bear the answers to the angels of the presence of the Lord. Last chapter, our last verse, we saw that the angels of the presence are in the sixth heaven, ministering, making propitiation, bloodless offerings. Now the fifth has angels who are answering to those angels, right? As we described that hierarchy earlier in Apocalypse of Abraham. And in the fourth heaven are thrones and dominions, in which hymns are forever offered to God. Therefore, whenever the Lord looks upon us, all of us tremble. The heavens, the earth, and the abysses tremble in the presence of his majesty. But the sons of men who do not regard these things sin and provoke the Most High. So powerful stuff there. The abysses is a whole nother topic. We're focusing on the seven heavens, right, in this episode, but with the abysses, that's something created on in Jubilees chapter 2, verse 2. It describes the abysses having been made along with the heavens and earth, because the abysses are really like part of the earth. It's the underworld. Okay. And so that would refer to Sheol in the Hebrew, Hades in the Greek, maybe Tartarus in the Greek for another chamber, prison of angels, right? Abaddon in the Hebrew, same place as Tartarus. So the abysses tremble even, but what else do you got?
Somebody just shared, I guess that what was found, I guess in Qumran the other day, it's called the
Curse tablet.
And they're saying it's the greatest archaeological discovery of all time.
I'm excited to look more into that, because I just heard about it. I want to say day before yesterday.
I need to actually make a note. You know what? If you ever see me checking my phone or writing stuff down during live streams, every time I get people in the building, new knowledge gets dropped. Like this is me on the sharpening stone with that iron sharpening iron.
And I feel like I'm talking so fast.
That up.
Yeah, there's good stuff. Yeah, for sure. That was a big discovery that they're looking at. Yeah, man. And we don't even get told. It doesn't even get talked about when major archaeological discoveries that venerate and validate the scriptures and the truth of the Father, they're not, the major press release. They're not holding a conference and putting it on ABC News to tell you about these things all too often. But
no, you got to dig for it. You got to turn every stone over anymore.
That's right. Yep. Test all things and hold fast to what is good and study to show yourself approved. Okay, so this was the cue up for the first video. We finally got to it. I hope everybody enjoys it. Little tour of the creation model from top to bottom. already at an hour and a half. My goodness, we could spend all night talking about this stuff. I know I could.
Hey, no worries, brother. I've been looking forward to this, man.
Cool.
This is, I look so forward to live stream night because the whole week you give your time to work and you give your time to jobs and you just give your time to so many people that don't care about you or the kingdom. And to me, it's like, where most people at the end of the week, they'd be like, well, I'm going to go down to the bar or I'm going to go have a drink. I'm like, dude, I just want to get in on here and talk and chop it up with people about the kingdom. This is my cool down from insanity and the world. So this is great.
I can relate, especially, coming to so many truths to where people just don't want to hear about it unless it already aligns with their worldview. It's hard to get even my closest family members and friends interested in these kinds of topics. So it's a mega blessing to be able to chop it up and fellowship with another brother who's interested in these things too. So I really appreciate you, man.
Hey, we got Brother Josh in the building. I've seen Brother Matt come in the building tonight. Brother Josh is in the building. You got the whole Flat Earth crew in here today. Man.
I'm happy to see y'all. Blessings.
Hey, shalom, everybody. It's great
Josh,
to see you.
Josh, Founded Earth Brothers. I'm excited and ready to jump on over y'all's channel when you're ready as well. Let's get to it. But that was that for that animation. Like I was trying to say, I'll have to try to make that available. We might have to save it for Uncommon Ground. That's what I was really making it for. But I figured since the presentation was about that topic tonight here, I wanted to give y'all a sneak peek, a little teaser on that one. So we'll let y'all see what that looks like in full quality. ASAP.
There you go. Wes, Josh mentioned that back to you. There you go.
Very excited. Looking forward to it. Thank you, friends.
Awesome.
What else did we have tonight on the agenda for a couple slides? Before
did you want to play that other video, the Irenaeus?
That's coming up here in a couple.
Oh, slides. Okay, gotcha. I got it queued up for you.
Yeah, okay. Irenaeus. It's a good dude to check out what some of what he says. But over here in the 5th cave of Qumran at the Dead Sea Scrolls, we're seeing a text called the Compositions of David. And I thought this was really interesting because it's going to set up a text that speaks more to the topic that we're discussing here tonight. It says, David, son of Jesse, is wise and is a light, like the light of the sun, and a scribe, and discerning and perfect in all his ways before El and men. And Yahweh gives to him a discerning spirit and enlightened spirit, and he writes psalms. And so here it gets into some calendar details, but it says 3,600 psalms, right? We're only familiar with, is it 150 psalms in the modern American Bible? If you look at some of the other collections of scriptures around the world, including the Dead Sea Scrolls, there are 160 psalms that are pretty popular. The extra 10 chapters of Psalms, I'd recommend anybody, but apparently he wrote 3,600 Psalms total. He was producing hits,
timeless masterpieces.
He was in the studio jamming them out, right? So, and songs to sing before the altar of the perpetual Olav every day for all the days of the year, 364. In case you're not familiar with the calendar represented by the Qumran Cave Dead Sea Scrolls, as well as the Book of Enoch and Jubilees, directly address that the biblical calendar was to have not only 12 months at all times, never mentioning a 13th month. It says that there are 364 days only in that, which I found interesting. Recently, I realized that the moon, the lunar year, is 354 days long, 354 days. And if you look in Jubilees 6, it straight tells you the moon comes in 10 days too soon from year to year. That's why they add a 13th on the lunar calendars. They add a 13th month to try to keep up with it every 2.5 years, because there are 13 lunar cycles every 2.5 years.
I've noticed the only time I could find, the 13th month is whenever Ezekiel laid on his side for the sins of Israel. And when you count up the days and then he gives the timeline, it's the only one reference in the scripture you can really find, like for a 13th month. I wish there was a secondary because that's something I need to bring up on here one day, the studies that, because a couple people's cross paths with that, but that's the only reference I can really do the math on.
The calendar all the calendar stuff is some of the most troublesome, confusing topics. You know, when it comes to the communities, there's so many different calendars. I've definitely reached an understanding that these things, the fact that it's frustrating and a confusion, and that we're struggling to find the details and flesh those out, is a healthy reminder that we are in dispersion. You know, without an earthly temple, without an earthly priest, and that the dispersion is a result of the sins of the forefathers, right? Whereas it's all prophesied that we will get on the same page. We will have all the missing scriptures available to us and the law of God written on our heart, to where we will, in the kingdom, we'll be doing these things perfectly and without fail. And we'll definitely all be on the same calendar then. And so right now, it's a reminder that we're practicing in faith these things. We're practicing like a rehearsal for the time when we'll be able to do it perfectly, because we're not in the land. We're trying to keep these feasts and these dates and holy days as best as we can. But I don't think that anybody can 100% say that they've got it perfect, just like with their behavior and keeping Torah in the first place, right?
Yeah, I think the best thing to look forward to is Isaiah 66:23, where all flesh will come worship before me, saith Yahuwah, on new moons and Sabbaths. I'm like, please, somebody tell me, just go ahead and take the shofar and let me know when the new moon is. Luke will be present. Sound the shofar on Shabbat. Luke will be present. There will be no problems. I will gladly comply. Just somebody help a brother out, okay?
Yeah, right.
So yeah, I look forward to those days too. Oh, somebody said trigger warning in the comments. Yeah, we're getting in deep topics tonight, guys.
That's why I wanted to go ahead and say what I just had to say, because the topic of calendar, 364 days, came up. But the point here being is that David wrote a lot of psalms, apparently one for every day of the year, and then some times 1,000. But we got going. The next slide will let this be the setup for it, because in a text known as the Songs of Sabbath Sacrifice is in the fourth cave, Qumran 4Q405. In this fragment, it says, "Praise the God of all the highest heavens, all you who are eternally holy, deputies among the priests who draw near, the second council in the wondrous habitation among the 7 priests, among those knowledgeable of eternal things. Exalt him, princes who rule with his portion, his wonders. Praise the God of the godlike, you 7 priests who draw near to him in the highest heaven, 7 wondrous realms set out by the precepts governing his temples," plural. So earlier we mentioned angels, priests. We know that there are 7 specific archangels, as are called. The book of Enoch gives you a nice list of them there, with Raphael, right? Uriel. They go on and on. But then there's 7 priests, referring to in highest heavens and 7 wondrous realms and multiple temples. This is what I was alluding to earlier when I said I think there's a temple in every one of these realms of heavens, of the firmaments, and that there's a whole priesthood doing literal physical worship services on an altar, as was prescribed and instructed to the priests on earth. But they're doing it. Hopefully, I can't say the angels are without sin, but our Messiah, our high priest who services in the temple, he is absolutely without sin.
You know, something people I don't think consider either is, like Admiral Byrd, whenever he said that there was ever so much land mass when he went down there, because they all know that it goes and extends out to the first dome. But the interesting thing is, if you look at the earth and then you look at the other domes outwards, think about how much land mass and how much space and how much just how vast this structure is. Like, we're at the heart of this grand show, I mean, I mean, there's whole worlds out there that we haven't even seen yet, That's true. I mean, this is amazing.
It really is. Yep. Yeah, I'm not of the belief that we can get out of the enclosure, like I was just trying to explain earlier, that a mortal fleshly body cannot ascend through the heavens until you're given the incorruptible, immortal body of water and spirit. And so, there is potentially more land on the outside of this structure immediately around us, but I don't think it's available to us, but it absolutely is to the angels who live there.
Yeah, if somebody could put a word in for me, if there's a place kind of like, Central Florida, like by St. Augustine, if there's another place in one of the domes outside there, if I am county worthy of the kingdom, I'd love to have a little piece of real estate out there. Just putting a word in for a man.
any heavenly real estate agents available to go ahead and make that happen?
Somebody could just hit Luke up at 7Trumpets Prepper Gmail following this show. We'd appreciate you.
Nice. Yes, sir. This is a text that I thought was strong. Just the 7 realms, especially tying into the fact that there's priestly angels working in a priestly capacity, doing priestly things in temples, apparently plural. There are 7s all over Scripture, even in nature and in real world observation. A lot of times things come in 7s, and we could sit here brainstorming on those all night. But I've listed a few of them. There's 7 days in a week, the biblical creation week, right? 6 days work, 7th day rest. 7 colors in the visible spectrum, like primary, secondary colors of the rainbow, we call it. 7 notes in musical scales, right? Usually, typically, most scales of music, and the one we're familiar with, there's 7 in an octave. 7 trumpets on, during the tribulation, with the 7th trumpet ending and beginning the resurrection and the millennial reign. 7 angels to the 7 churches, as we were describing. There's 7 archangels a moment ago, and there's 7 churches that some of the chapters of Revelation are written to, right? Yeshua has something to say to each one of them. And there's 7 bowls of judgment during the tribulation process as well. Something else that's fun is after the area code, there's 7 digits in my girlfriend's number, but none of y'all can have that. The average adult male is 7 heads tall. And if you go to the next slide, I got a cool little depiction visualization for you to understand. Now, this has nothing to do with chakras or any kind of Hinduism. That's not even what I'm getting for. Just if you look at like an artist's book that's trying to teach you how to draw, it'll break down that the average human male is about 7 heads tall. Is all that I'm pointing out here. Yeah. And so 7 heads tall is cool because there's a temple that we call that right there on the sides of your head. And so there's also a temple probably in all of the heavens, but there's the best one, the biggest, most high one, I would say, in the 7th.
Yeah, people really get a new meaning on when people say the Most High. Like when I always viewed the Most High as he is above all things. Well, I mean, literally, he is above all things now. I mean, it's very clear with just this presentation alone. But like I've always viewed that as the Most High is above all things in my life. It's the importance. He's above all things worship, like et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But there's also a deeper meaning is he is at the most highest point of this whole superstructure. Like it all adds up,
That's right. Yep, literal, physical, directional terms and descriptors that he gives us because he knows what he's talking about. Greatest author of all time. A lot of people know this is the menorah.
That's right.
And it's the 7-branch candlestick. This is one of the temple items, the furniture that's in the temple, which the temple on earth was patterned after the one in the heavens. It's interesting to see. I'm not the only one to have made this comparison. And in fact, I got it from a gentleman named Irenaeus. No longer with us, rest his soul. However, he was a 2nd century early church figure, whereas he was the direct disciple of a man named Polycarp, who many people may be familiar with as a direct disciple of John the Apostle, the beloved Apostle John. So you got Yeshua, taught John the Apostle, who taught Polycarp, who taught Irenaeus. This guy has some things to say in lots of texts that he has written in his different letters and epistles to churches because he was a prominent figure. Irenaeus was the Bishop of Lyons, which is in France at the time. So he had a writing that he called the Proof of Apostolic Teaching. And he just went over some of the basics of discipleship. And he thought it was important to include something here I prepared this in a video. Yes, the 2nd century church father knew that there were 7 heavens.
Now this world is encompassed by 7 heavens, in which dwell powers and angels and archangels, doing service to God, the Almighty and Maker of all things, not as though he was in need, but that they may not be idle and unprofitable and ineffectual. Now the heaven which is first from above, and encompasses the rest, is that of wisdom, and the second from it, of understanding, and the third, of counsel, and the fourth, reckoned from above, is that of might, and the 5th, of knowledge, and the 6th, of godliness, and the 7th, this firmament of ours, is full of the fear of that Spirit which gives light to the heavens. For, as the pattern of this, Moses received the 7-branched candlestick, that shined continually in the holy place, for as a pattern of the heavens he received this service, according to that which the word spake unto him. Thou shalt make it according to all the pattern of the things which thou hast seen in the mount. Irenaeus, the proof of apostolic preaching, 9.
Irenaeus, the proof of apostolic teaching, chapter 9 is where you can find that. And he's somebody that was direct disciple, Yeshua, John, Polycarp, Irenaeus. I feel like he would have known better than we do these days. Coming from where he was coming from.
That's like the writings of Josephus. Oh man, good stuff. Just good stuff.
Yeah, if y'all go to Uncommon Ground, check out the Uncommon Ground playlist on WesBlazeMuziK on my channel. Episode 17, we talked about the biblical underworld, where we address more about Sheol, Hades, and basically the place where is the departed resting place of the spirits, the departed spirits, I mean. And it's a physical, cavernous, subterranean retreat, as it's defined in the definitions, where departed spirits literally go to await the resurrection and judgment, whether they're resurrected to eternal life or they're resurrected to the lake of fire after judgment, right? They're all in a different compartment under the surface of the earth. And it's physically, literally underneath us. Whereas on the globe model, they'll tell us that we live on, this spinning ball that has a molten iron metal core, magma, and heat and all that going on under there, when they have only ever dug 8 miles deep. They've never dug further than that to be able to tell you for sure, but they'll give you this whole cutout diagram of a molten metal core in the heart of the earth. Whereas Yeshua says that he went to the heart of the earth for 3 days and 3 nights, and he didn't describe anything like that. But Luke 16 does describe perfectly the same things that the chapter 22 in the book of Enoch is describing about Sheol and this resting place of the departed spirits of men. And from that video, from that episode, I had a clip where I just kind of give you an understanding of eschatology from an animation standpoint. When the day of the Lord happens and the sun comes down with all the angels, they wipe out the wicked, they resurrect their people from Sheol, and the kingdom comes down, and the resurrected are brought into the barn, right? The kingdom, the mansions, and as it's descending down through the heavens. And so I had an animation for that. If you'd like to try to play it. There you go. Hey, that one did work perfectly. I appreciate it.
There you go. I might get this down eventually, my man.
No, me too, because I didn't know that there was a file size limit that would help us out here. So I could have prepared for that. Now that I know, I will keep that in mind for the future. I hope everybody could see that one well and just get an idea for maybe what it could look like, because I like to try to envision it and make it real for people. I know a lot of people are visual learners or hands-on learners, and for hands-on, we are also working on with this show. Since episode 0.5, before episode 1 started, we had planned to build what's called the Firmament Model Project, the Firmament Project, and we are building a literal model that's not only visible and you can touch it, it's actually going to be functional. We've already got the flood functionality, where this thing has waters above in the second firmament, and it's got a bottom firmament that can be filled with water all the way up. I wish I had time to put a video together for y'all, but y'all go check out Uncommon Ground. You'll see several clips throughout the series where we're showing y'all updates on what that's looking like. There's a little New Jerusalem, right? A kingdom that descends down from the third firmament that will go down to the earth, and then in the flood, we can make it flood, and the New Jerusalem will ascend up back to the third firmament. And cool stuff like that we're doing with it. Even put a little Noah's Ark in there. So shout out.
I need an upgrade on mine then. I just got the one layer. I need like the Cadillac model.
There you go. Yep, we're working on stuff like that so that other people might be inspired to put something like that together. I'd love to be able to have them available for purchase one day, but we'd need some more help with that. But yeah, you guys check out Uncommon Ground, where we're talking about these kind of concepts every episode. Yeah, we did 25 episodes in the first season, but good news, season 2 is on the way.
I love that, the firmamentalist. That's awesome.
that's Sean's nickname. That's good. That'll work. Yeah, y'all go check out that teaser if you want to hear the cool little jingle with it, and see other animations like I've put together and shown y'all tonight. Y'all check out WesBlazeMuziK on my channel over there. All esteem to the Elohim, my brothers. But I really appreciate you having me on. What else did you want to kind of touch on before you have to let me go?
Oh, shoot, brother. Man, it's got really good and deep. That's the thing I want to accomplish with this show. Like I was telling you, is bring so many good people in here and just let them loose. Because I'm all about staying in my lane. Yeah. And like when people ask 7Trumpets Revelation, what's going to go down the last days? I'm like, no problem. We can break that down all day long, because I've spent a decade preparing for that and trying to warn people. But it's like, there's so many good topics, especially like true biblical cosmology, true biblical creation. Yeah. Like, that's why I love getting you guys in the building, because like some people have never, tonight is probably like some of the first time that people's ever heard some of this stuff.
Right.
I mean, it was a year ago that I got a deeper understanding on the Father's creation myself. Right. And I've been on this walk going on 13 years, since 2009, whenever that was. I've lost track of time. But I mean, like, we're in a time where every bit of knowledge, people need to grab every last little grain, because we're not being told this in the church house. You're not being told this in science class. You're not being told this. We're really not being told this, period, by anybody, hardly.
No.
So, I mean, tonight you just handed people out nuggets of pure gold,
Thank you. Try to ladle some gravy for them. Yeah, it's really important to me, I think, because we live in a world where every which way media, the culture around us, society, and the people we're around can all too often make you believe in some regard that the things that are in the Bible aren't literally true. Even believers, they'd much rather interpret it in some sort of metaphoric or way that just makes it to where the words on the page don't mean what they literally mean as they are defined. They will want to interpret it in some way where the words mean something that they don't say. And I'm here to tell you that you can absolutely trust that the Father put forth word that means what it says, that you can learn from, and you can accept what it says and glean from it in that way, because I think it's important in any story when you're reading anything, instruction book for anything, whatever it is, there is a setting and a context, and the setting is all too often important to that context. And as the greatest author that ever was, who inspired our scriptures that we have preserved for us lovingly through wars and generations of people who hate him, he has preserved these texts for us. That's a miraculous thing in itself. And they have a consistent message. And all of the entire story, a lot of people say, oh, that was back in those Bible days, in the Bible times. Brothers and sisters, we're still in it. It's not over
living
yet.
Word.
We're not. It's
word.
Not over. And the more you look and see, oh, wow, he's described the setting of the entire story, where it all takes place, where he is, where we are, where we're going to go when it's all over, until the kingdom comes. And then we dwell on earth as the meek inherit the earth for eternity with the Father and his Son. And that all takes place in a house that he's built for us, as much different than what the world will tell you, that we live on this speck of dust that's infinitesimally small and not the center of it all, whereas we very much are. Everything in the heavens revolves around us, as you can observe and physically look up and see. And so there's more to the story, and I just wish that I could pray that everybody would dig deeper into wanting to get to know it, because through that you'll get to know the Father better. And that's right. That's the most important thing, I think.
With knowledge comes wisdom, and wisdom, trust in the word that it is true. Somebody said right here, said they want to thank us both. Learned so much from Lucas's channel. Night was the first of actually understand the firmaments. So thank you. There you go. Somebody definitely got got the truth tonight. And
glory.
I mean, with more and more sharing of this word, people are going. What's so dangerous right now is when people come to a full, conclusive understanding, a real good, rounded understanding of the word, they can't be manipulated and lied to anymore. And I think that is, you look at Satan's kingdom, it's always temptation first, then it's deceiving, and then it's, well, if I can't deceive you, then I'll try to coerce you, and then I'll intimidate you, and then ultimately I'll kill you if you don't comply. I mean, like, once you understand the construct and the current ruler of this world and how his kingdom works, well, then when you start understanding the Most High Yah's kingdom and how it works, you're going to change teams real quick.
Yeah.
And or if you haven't decided to join the Most High's team, you're going to get on the right team.
You're not going to be neutral. You're not going to be neutral anymore. I know that's right. That's about where I was.
Be on that fence long.
No. I had to climb up on that fence, and I figured out which side I was falling onto immediately. Well, the baptism for me was a very important part. I felt like it did definitely lift some spiritual blinders off my eyes because it was sincere that I did it out of a earnest heart. But then the prayer, and then him using, this is the topic, specifically cosmology, the creation model, his actual truth of his world that he created for us. That's what the Father used to bring me to sanctification, which the end goal would be to salvation, right? Like we say proleptically that we have salvation, that we're saved, but we're still capable of death and sin and all these things. Whereas the fulfillment of our salvation will come to a complete finality at the return of our Messiah, when he gives his people immortal life, raises them from the dead. So he sanctified me through his truth that he used to bring me to scripture and to get me interested in these things. And so I just pray that since it did it for me, and I've seen it personally, firsthand, witnessed it on social media for the most part, but also in real life, I've watched people just had their lives turned around, changed for the better, because they started looking into this topic. It led them to be more curious about the things of the Father. They were opening his word and digging into it as a result of it. And this is happening on a worldwide basis for lots of other people that might not even be in social media, or they're not hidden from you by the algorithms. So that it's a phenomenon, because the Holy Spirit is being poured out in these times, and lots of people are calling to mind what it's like to walk in discipleship with him and understand his truth and accept that as truth, no matter what man says, no matter what they'll say science has proven. You're going to stand on the word of the Father 10 times out of 10 as a result of digging into these things. And so I pray that for everybody, and I appreciate y'all hearing me out. Thank you to Lucas for having me on. Much love to you, bro.
Oh yeah, brother. Hey, love you, bro. I appreciate the work you're doing for the kingdom. And what, I guess, to sum all this up tonight, everybody, is blessed is he that endures the end, same shall be saved. This is not a in it today and out of it tomorrow. It's an all in thing. And I tell you what, it is amazing at the truths that are coming to light in these last days. Daniel talks about many will run to and fro, knowledge will increase, and then the end will come. There is so much knowledge that is being poured out in the last days that generations of people, or foundations of many generations, being restored. I mean, we're just seeing this outpouring, like you said, set apart spirits just being outpoured. I mean, like the things that the Most High is opening our eyes to, it's just unbelievable. Or I mean, it's believable, but it's just beyond the finite mind to be able to process it sometimes.
Yeah.
But now, is this outside of YouTube though? Is there anything else in the Facebook that we shared at the beginning? There's any other links? Anything you want to share to everybody real quick before we wrap this up this evening?
Man, I could share a list of them, because I try to be active on different kind of platforms and ways that will reach people. I'm always trying to think of creative ways to get in front of more people with the messages of the gospel of the kingdom of God and of his creation model, as well as what it means to be a disciple of our Messiah, to walk in Torah and things like this. So I got a lot of different pages, but you can go to WesBlazeMuziK YouTube or Messenger of the Most High on Facebook and see links and pretty much anything you need to see over there.
Awesome. Well, I know September I'm going to be pretty much wrapped up with my off-grid construction business, stuff like that. So I'm going to be like ramping this up big time. And
Cool.
I'd love to get you back in the house, later this summer or this fall, chop it up again. If there's a topic, like you personally like to cover or something, by all means, just let me know. We'll schedule it out. I'd love to get you back in here because I've got a whole list of people that I've known for going on now over a decade. I'm like, hey, come over here and talk about what you talk about all the time.
Yeah.
Don't talk about it. So
I got a variety of topics that I'm passionate about, so I'd love to. Yeah, we have to.
Yeah, well, just think on it. Let me know, and we'll figure out a time and set it up and everything, man.
Sounds good, my brother. I appreciate it. Thank you again for having me on. Much love to you, and all you guys, go home and read your Bible and do what it says. The more important thing, right? Don't just read it and say, I believe that. Apply it to your life, because the more you do that, the more effective you're going to be at getting other people to do so. Love you guys. Bless you, and may bless you.
Hey, Most High keep you, my friend. And guys, to everybody else, as always, hope Most High Yah baruch you and keep you, make his face shine upon you, show you favor, and give you shalom, my friends, in Yahushua's name. And we'll see you next time.